to the latest episode of the Live Series podcast, powered by Amicus. My name's Shaun Hughes. I head up the Nordic Contract Division and I'm your host. Today I'm joined by a fantastic panel to discuss challenges and provide insights into how you can create a best-in-class tech function. Without further ado, let's meet the professionals. Silvia, Anna, Ehtisham and Tobias, welcome to the Live Series. It's a pleasure to have you on the channel today. I won't do you the disservice of introducing you. I'll let you all do that. We'll work our way around the room. Silvia, would you like to kick us off?
Sure, thank you. And hi, everybody. My name is Silvia Kallgren. I'm a Director of Product Management at Tink. For those of you who don't know, at Tink, we are a fintech. We are the leading open banking platform in Europe, and we offer products such as account check, risk, finance management, and payments to our partners. We are currently about 800 people, and though we are an independent organization, last year we've been fully acquired by Visa, the card company. That's a very big organization with around 26,000 people. Personally, I've been in fintech for a while. Before Tink, I was working from some other big Swedish fintech, such as Klarna and Izettle. And I've been basically working in product my whole career. I have a passion for building great products and great teams. So I'm very happy to be here, and it's always fun to have these sessions around this topic. I hope that hopefully we can all take away something inspiring with us in the next 1 hour.
Thanks, Silvia. Let's stay with fintech, shall we? Tobias, tell us about you and what you do over at Fundler.
Yeah, sure. Hi, guys. Super fun to be here. My name is Tobias Bergquist. The same actually as Silvia. I've been in fintech, or in the financial sector, I should say, more or less my whole career, working in product and tech, always trying to bring in, but I would say more agile work way. That's what I really think is my passion and what I'm really good at, trying to create a new type of work ways that works for the new team, because I think that you can't find like a recipe that will work for any team everywhere. So you kind of have to, work around and see what will work for this team. So that's also what I'm trying to bring here today, also with some things that I've seen during the last years, and hopefully I also think that you will come with insights that will make me a better person doing what I try to do in the future as well. So at Fundler, we basically democratize savings. So we want to help people be able to save really good savings for so low costs as possible. Through an app, you can follow your investments. We have fund packages that would suit everyone. So that's what we're trying to do. It's super interesting. I've been in the savings world of finance my whole life, more or less. So working with Swedbank previous as well. So yeah, that's a little bit from me.
Thanks, Tobias. We'll come to you next, Anna. Tell us about you.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Really nice to meet you. I'm a freelance manager and an organizational coach. I have never yet been in fintech, but more on car sharing. I spent several years at Spotify in different roles, but mainly like a tech, in the tech world, in different constellations. And today I run my own company called Rubber Duck Consulting, where I help companies, and my current assignment is at a medtech startup here in Stockholm named Elsa Science that work with RA. So that's me.
And last but by no means least, Ehtisham, tell us about you and your role at Boozt.
Yep. So hi everyone. Thanks for having me today. And I'm Ehtisham and I work as a team lead at Boozt. It is one of those rapidly growing e-commerce platforms that we have in there. And my team is basically responsible for the technical part of Boozt Media Partnership, a model where we help our brands and our partners to basically run their campaigns and showcase their products and basically help them selling better. So we are basically owners of that whole product, that whole model in that regard. And yeah, that's a bit of what we've been doing at Boozt.
Thanks for those brilliant introductions, everyone. Now that we've met today's panel, let's jump in to the topic in question, shall we? Creating a best-in-class tech function. The panel have each prepared a question that they will pose to their fellow guests, easy for me to say. We'll kick the discussion off with Silvia's question, who asks, how do you create a tech culture that remains focused on the company's products and customers? Silvia, can we get a little bit of context as to where your question stemmed from?
Definitely. Thanks for introducing it. And this one is really close to my heart for a long time, because this one is hard, right? We all know that according to the books and very much in reality, some of the most successful tech companies are very much product and customer focused. And usually in the early stage, it's very true and it's much easier. But we know that as the company grows, there are more and more distractions around. And it's getting pretty hard in practice to keep this laser focus on our product and our product customers, not only among our product people, but also among the larger tech organization, including engineers and all of us in our company, really. So my question is, what are some of the things in your experience that we can do to keep this focus in the whole organization and to remain, whenever we grow up and we are maybe a 100+, 200+ tech company, that we still remain very much product vision and customer focused? We'd love to hear your sort of best tips on this topic.
Anna, I think it's appropriate to come to you first, given your role as a freelancer. I'm sure you've experienced many different sort of cultures and how to create a great culture, prioritizing products and customers. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and I think it bridges a bit into what I've been thinking about myself as well as we were preparing for this. But for me, it comes down to two things. So one being, what do you incentivize in your company and how do you enable people? So incentivizing for me is like, what do you talk about in your all hands meetings? Are you focused on your customers and your products? How are your goals framed? What do you promote people for and how do you compensate them? And if those things are not connected to your customers or your products, you have a problem already from the start. But then very practically on like how to enable people is like, do they have the tools to be able to measure how their products are doing? Are they participating in customer interviews, or is it just like a small subset of people that are doing that? At my last company, we did a whole day, which is difficult when you're a larger company, but we did one day that was about stress testing our service as though we were users of it. And it was mandatory for people to do a day with customer success, like on a recurring basis, to make sure that they hear the pains of our users. So those are just some ways that you can do it, but it's hard for sure.
Ehtisham, we'll come to you next. I'm intrigued on your experience with this.
Yeah, I would like to add a couple of things in this regard. I mean, in my recent experience, I've seen that when we are much more focused on building a product and then building a team around it, I think personally I've seen that two of those aspects, as I call them, one is to align the values. For example, I mean, we have seen this practice for some time in our fraternity, that when we are building such kind of culture, we try to define the company's values and try to prioritize the customer centricity and the product excellence around it. But at times, I think what's more important will be to align those values around your team's culture itself as well. Like, you have to define what sort of people and are engaging with each other, and how the product that they're building is going to basically going to make a difference. I can kind of explain this with an example. Recently, we were trying to build an in-house product in which the users of that product were mainly our backend office users, in which you can see a team of 12 to 14 people. So one of my teammates asked me that, what kind of impact are we creating here when we are just building a tool for somebody who is more working at the back office? Because people usually, when you talk about tech world, they're much more focused on working on products which are going to touch lives of millions. But then the thing that I had to align at that point in time was that look at the bigger picture. Basically, what you're trying to do is that you are going to create something which is being used by maybe 12 to 14 people, but it is going to impact the major players in the market itself. Like there were some really big brands who were being the part of that product itself. So I think this is one of the things that you need to align with your team, with the people that are working around you. And it is not only about aligning a company's value, it is at times it's good to create the values for the team itself, and you have to dictate them and help those guys to be motivated about when they're building those products. So this is one of the things that I think. And another one, just to add another thing, is to celebrate successes frequently around with the people that are basically you motivated them to build something, you delivered something, and then you really need to celebrate that thing in a way that you keep them motivated through the process. I think that is another very important part of this whole tech culture, that when you try to build a team around the product itself.
Just from my perspective on that aspect, it's something that I'm going to be discussing in another roundtable coming up around, I think what you're saying there, Ehtisham, and in terms of celebrating small wins, really plays into creating a resilient team, I think. And ultimately, we're talking today about best in class. I think resilience comes an awful lot into that. Tobias, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, super good question. The question that we all struggle with, and I think also it's so important to remember that even when you come and you feel like, okay, we have really created a great culture at this company or this team or what it could be, you have to also continue to work with it, right? Because it's not given that it's going to keep on being this great team. And I'm going to come into this topic a bit also. I'm going to be more looking from the perspective of group dynamics, but it's kind of the same thing. And I think we work very much with, because when I started at Fundler, it's not a long time ago, it's 1.5 years, but a lot of things happen in, tech market, and, it's a constant moving market. You would have new people coming in, others are leaving. So quite fast, I was the more senior actually. And again, I had only been working for 1.5 years in this particular team. So I think for us, it was very necessary to find like these given ceremonies, you see maybe from the beginning with dailies, and you check in, also like actually come into the office, get to know each other, if that's a possibility that your team and teammates have. Because I really feel that all this, everybody's talking about it now, but the talk that you do, at the coffee machine, but for me, it's so important. I really do believe that there's where you create a really good culture also. Do things maybe outside of the office, all these kind of soft values. You need to think about it. That I think it was really great that you said. I was going to go into it, celebrate the wins. I think that's a very, very important thing, and that could be everything from you maybe did a new product release, a big one for the whole company, or it could just be that but we have tried this way of working, this little thing that we added on maybe in our work way, and it has been working now for maybe 4 weeks. Those things can be celebrated too. It can be whatever really. So yeah, and then I also personally think that you should have leaders also in the team that, or in the company, that also can see that this person might be motivated by this, and this person might be motivated by that, and the whole team, what motivates them together, and get to know each other. So I think these aspects are super important also, and I think it very often comes down to a good formal or informal leadership. But a person that actually is aware and see it. So yeah, that's some few insights from my perspective and what I've seen.
Some fantastic insights on your question there, Silvia. Have you got anything to add before we move on to the next question?
Yeah, first of all, thank you for sharing your thoughts. I think we got some really good contributions on that. maybe one tip to share, that's like one of the most recent realization of my career that I found a bit exciting, is how important the onboarding process is, because it really sets the tone the first few days when we onboard new people on the team. And we just realized recently that it was not obvious that, you know, all of our new employees have actually tried a product. And it's always possible, even if you have a more complicated B2B product. Like, it's very much possible to just sit down and like go through the whole process to really feel that. And another thing that we tried out and we are really seeing success is to participate at customer support calls. Usually that goes very much against a silo, but it can be such a valuable experience to, you know, sit with someone on the front line and actually hear what are your customers talking about, what are they calling about. It can be a bit of a hassle to introduce it, but I think it's really making wonders for the culture and for the organization as a whole.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to Anna's question next, taking a bit more of a look at sort of collaboration between different functions. So Anna's question is, how do you involve the tech team in the business and product strategy to work in a fruitful way? So tell me a bit more about your question, Anna, before we open it up to the room.
Sure. So I believe this is something that most companies struggle with, at least if you're grown to a size that's bigger than, you know, everyone sitting in the same room in the company. But where you balance involving everyone in everything, which means that engineers sitting in a lot of business meetings where they feel this is not worth my time. Or you try to shield them with good intention to give them more deep focus time, but then that means that they are completely removed from all of the business and the strategy of it, and they just become code monkeys, which I don't think is a great path for making sure that people stay a long time and are empowered employees. So I'm curious to hear, like, how do you balance that in your organizations, and what have you tried?
Well, let's go to the Director of Product Management first, shall we? And pick Silvia's brains on how we can be better at that within tech and cross-functionally collaborating. What are your thoughts, Silvia?
Right, continuously work in progress, right? But what we can do is to try things out. One thing that I think it's very common and it's very easy to fall into this pitfall is to sort of have the product people and the business people go and polish a beautiful strategy or business presentation and then present that material to the tech team or the engineering team as an FYI. This is the thing. Whereas it's so much better when we can work with some kind of loop of daring to share and not, you know, perfectly ready or polished material, but just the kind of, you know, there has to be something already that we can have a good discussion about, but really give the tech team and the engineering team the agency to contribute with meaningful feedback and to empower them, and then go ahead and, you know, polish the beautiful work. So whatever is the planning cadence of the company, it could be quarterly or like 2 times a year. I think it's such a good exercise to take that half a day or 1 day with your team when you can sit together at a not perfect material and feel that us as a team together, we are actually contributing and feedbacking on that. So I think that's one good thing that we are trying out. Another thing that I found really useful is sort of regular product reviews, even for tech teams who are continuously working with the product. I think it's so often that you are, you know, mostly focusing on the details and you forget to zoom out a little bit and look at the big picture. So it can be really helpful to make sure that you sort of have built that in the organizations and the team cadence to have a product review, not only with the big company and the stakeholders, but as a team, as a tech team. Like, if we are looking at our product, are we proud of it? Do we like how it looks like? Is there something big that we are missing? This is usually time very well spent.
Thanks, Silvia. So we'll flip that slightly and go from the product side over to the development side. Obviously, Ehtisham is a team lead and a back-end dev over at Boozt. So what's your experience in achieving fruitful working between product, business and tech teams?
Yeah, I think it is one of those core issues that normally we have in our environment. Like keeping updated everybody and getting everybody involved. So I think I can break it down in a couple of points from my experience. I think the very first thing I would like to add is like keeping everybody updated. And when I say updated, it's more like keeping them informed about the business goals, challenges, in the market trends, and why, how, and what, all these things, because these are the things that usually the tech teams, the developers, are the ones who are really doing the job in the lower level. They really need that thing they need the information, the best possible information, and they want to be informed about it. So one thing is to be regularly updating people. And it can be done through various practices. I think recently what we've been trying is like when we are creating our business KPIs, alongside that we are creating our tech KPIs as well, where we are trying to align those business goals alongside our technical side of it, where we are aligning them together and then formulating those KPIs so that everybody is on the same page and is being informed. That is one of the things that can be done. Another one that it is kind of a practice that can be done within the teams. I would say cross teams in a way that let's call that. I mean, I call it rotational assignments, in which you allow your tech team members basically to work temporarily in other departments of the product in order to gain the holistic business insights. Because it's not possible that you're working in one area of it and then you think of getting the whole domain knowledge. So for me, I think in this tech team culture, we need to create something where we are allowing them to get the domain knowledge. It's like, for example, if somebody is working on a marketing product and it is kind of connected to something in you can say operations department, it's better to collaborate and do these rotational assignments where they are going in their team, becoming part of them temporarily, trying to learn what they are doing and contributing on their level. So this can be done in order to involving tech team in the strategy itself of the product, of the overall thing that we are doing. Then just to add a couple of more, I will just try to quickly wrap this up. Would say that strategy workshops is another thing that can be done. It is something that is a bit new to me as well, but I mean, it is something that is a bit fruitful as well, that you try to organize workshops where tech experts from the tech team are collaborating with the non-tech stakeholders on strategy development. So when you're trying to develop the strategy around the product, you can have these workshops where you're sitting together with the guys who are really covering the business side and try to come up with what is going to benefit in the longer run, so on and so forth. And last but not the least, I think communication is the core of all this. Again, to summarize this up, well, you can achieve all these, but I think the crux of all this is going to be in the two-way, or at least should I call it like flawless communication, or being effective communication to be the part of it. That you have to be effectively communicated of what's going on. So on this level where you're working in the tech team, I think these are the things that we can kind of do or perform in order to create this best kind of, not near to best, I would say best is nothing one of a thing, but I think near to best kind of communication about the strategy of the product itself within the team.
Thanks, Ehtisham. And heading back over to the product side of things, Tobias, what are your thoughts?
Thank you. Yeah, but I would say as head of product, I mean, I would go in a normal day probably to between 5 to 7 meetings. That's how it could look like for me. So I mean, I have a lot of information coming in from all the stakeholders throughout the organization, and I'm very close to the CEO, for example. And I mean, Fundler, we're a small company, so for us, I mean, plans they change. So I'm not going to say more than that. So, I mean, I have to choose now what to do. What information do I bring back to the team? And I mean, try to be smart. And I've tried, from telling a lot to telling little. And I wouldn't say that there's necessarily like this golden recipe either in this case. But you really need to, as previous talker said, communicate and be wise in how you communicate. And I've done something now the last maybe year, that I would have like this product roadmap and like vision, not too far, because I mean they rarely hold, but like coming quarters at least, so everybody can follow up. Like this is the bigger initiatives that still are like intact, and we, you know, those are rolling, so everybody can follow. And I would say that many that wants to know more, they will also come and because now it's visual, it's on a board. So they will also come and we will discuss about it. Maybe we meet up in the coffee room again where it could hang, and we talk about it more. So I think that's a way of doing it, visualizing it, communicating about it, choose a bit how much to tell. I mean, usually you could very often say yourself, do I feel that this really, you know, will happen? Do I need to talk about this, what's being planned 6 months from now yet? Am I that sure it's gonna happen? And if the answer is yes, yeah, but then I think start communicating a bit by bit. You don't need to tell everything, you know, but a little bit, like this is coming, more or less. And then so communicate and let everybody be a bit involved, but you don't need to tell everything, because I think that can flip to the other side and create a lot of you could become worried maybe because everything feels very unclear and so on. So yeah.
Fantastic. Some useful insights there, Anna.
For sure. I think it's, I mean, to all of these things, we're all into the communication, right? And for me, it's also about like lowering the barrier to communicate with your stakeholders, right? So I think that you all have great examples on how to build it into your work. I think my only addition would be like to at least have one stakeholder that the team doesn't feel weird about reaching out to. So it's not only through you as a manager or as a product manager, but to have them in your Slack channel, or, you know, have some, Ehtisham talked about like FaceTime, and Tobias said like the coffee machine talk is so important, like to be able to have that bridge directly with the tech team so that they can show things early or ask questions about some implementation or whatever it might be. But yeah, thank you all. That was really interesting.
Fantastic. So we'll move on to Tobias's question, our penultimate question of today's show. Tobias asks, in a rapidly changing technological landscape, how do you prioritize and support the professional development of your tech team members, ensuring they stay motivated, engaged, and equipped with the latest skills and knowledge? Ehtisham, do you want to take this one first?
Yeah, sure. I mean, this whole thing is basically, I think, would be directly related to when you're onboarding people. When we are, I mean, I've seen this thing happening, that when we are onboarding people and they become part of the team, at times what happens is that they have their own personal ambitions. They want to grow in their own way, but at the same time, they have some obligations with the organization and the product that they're going to work with. So the whole idea about this is more related to the nurturing the skill development alongside what they are going to do day to day. And to add a bit in there to start the conversation, I would say how important it is to have skill diversity for the employees that come with something in their bag when they're joining, and you have to show them a path to nurture their skills in order to build something much proficient in them as an individual, to nurture their skills, what they already have, and how you can make them or grow them in their own way. So I'd like to have some insights from the guys.
I had a conversation this morning, funnily enough, with an engineering manager over at Monster Labs who was in Copenhagen, who highlighted this as a bit of an issue sometimes in terms of time management for him and his team, because he wants and sees huge value in his team and himself exploring new technologies and getting involved in new things and new ways of doing things, but ultimately having to rein that in so that the business needs are always adhered to. And that was something that he was struggling with at the moment. Silvia, I'm curious as to your experience with this.
So as Tobias mentioned at the beginning, I have to agree. I also don't believe in a one model kind of fits all kind of scenario. And learning and development can look so different because the bigger is your organization, the bigger is the budget of what you can afford. But I think what's interesting that even if you have a big budget, very often learning and development still does not happen. And the main reason that is that it's not really part of the culture, or you don't have any good, systematic behaviors and practices in the company that make sure that happens. So I think no matter what, maybe the common denominator is to make sure that in the company as a culture, you do have some very explicit and outspoken culture or system or behavior set up. And I think it can be pretty simple. Like one example that I think it's quite straightforward, but it very often does not happen, is that when any single employee sets their goals, they should also have learning and development goals. And your goals are, of course, partly the KPIs that contribute to the company's success, but it's also a very valuable question to ask, like, how do you want to develop yourself? So simply making that part of your yearly or bi-yearly quarterly performance review could be very nice. And I think another one too, it's a big decision for a company, whether you want to put that in the focus of the relationship, but really spelling it out that when there is an employee management relationship, is it the manager's responsibility to mentor and grow that employee? Is it more, a kind of follow become the performance, or is it really part of your culture and value in the organization that me as a manager, I'm responsible for creating a development plan and a personalized growth plan? In my experience, it tends to really pay off, so it's great to have it, but it's also not an easy thing to create when we start from scratch.
Thanks, Silvia. Anna, what are your thoughts and what are your experience with sort of continuous development and staying in touch with the latest ways of doing things to be at optimal performance as a team?
Maybe I will come at this a bit from a different angle, but at my current place, we did this as a team thing. So everyone prepped, of course, like we gave them a format, they prepped their own like thoughts around their development and what they're challenged by. And also to your point, Silvia, about like, what are the goals, like what are my personal goals versus what does the business need of me right now? And we did it as a team event. And I think that it serves two things, right? One being that talking about time, use of time, I think it gives more, like it can be hard to go through these like performance development, like you should book 20 meetings with 1.5 hours each. Like it tends to become something that feels heavy rather than enjoyable. And the second part is I like that it like shifts the dynamic, that growth is something that happens between me as a manager and an employee, but it becomes colleague to colleague, because while I agree that it's part of my responsibility to facilitate a conversation about your growth, I don't think that it necessarily means that I'm the best person to give feedback on what your goals are. So I like that. It was the first time I tried it, but it was really, it enriched the conversations. How about you, Tobias?
Thank you. A super interesting thing that actually here at Fundler, we've been talking quite much about this, and we've been trying now actually that we really want people to develop themselves, and we've seen also that tech developers, they're really good tech developers often stay ahead, like they know the trends, they see what's coming, and they are really interested, in their business. So we also said, but I mean, what can we do here? Of course, give them time, like during the daily during the daily work, let them try to also incorporate these new trends and see what they can bring in, like trial and error. It's okay to try things, and if it didn't work, well, fine. I mean, sure, that's going to happen a few times, but then sooner or later, you'll come in with something and it's going to work, and that's going to pay off and be really, really great. We've also seen front enders more and more after a few years doing that, feeling more comfortable that, yeah, but why not try a little bit back-end coding? Super, sit with a back-ender for one day and like see what you can do, and like they become more T-shaped. So we got a lot of that because we're quite a small company, right? So it could happen that a couple of people from the tech team is sick or I mean during summers, for example, to be able then to take maybe a front ender is there and to do some back-end stuff. I mean, it's amazing. So I think to really motivate, see what does motivate them. Either do they want to become more T-shaped, like have a broader experience, or do they want to dig deeper maybe? Well, then encourage that. I think it's a great like leadership question. And good leaders will see what motivates my teammates, and then also encourage it. Yeah.
Brilliant question. So we'll move on to our final question of today's episode. Ehtisham asks, how do you effectively handle changes in group dynamics when new colleagues join or leave your team? And why is group dynamics so important to be aware of when you are trying to create a best-in-class tech team? Anna, we'll come to you first. What do you think?
Sure. Do you want to say something more about the question, Ehtisham, before?
Sorry, that's my fault. Switched off. Ehtisham, give us some more context.
But then maybe I should say, I think actually we did a little switcheroo here. I think this is my question, actually.
Wow, I've really messed this up, haven't I?
This one was.
I have truly messed this up.
I was just waiting. When are we gonna?
I thought that earlier when you said it. I was thinking, oh wow, apologies. Okay, so whose question have I asked wrong? So I've got yours mixed up.
So was
my question, and this one is Tobias's question.
Right.
Okay, so have I already asked your question, Ehtisham?
Yeah.
Jesus, why didn't anyone tell me sooner? Apologies, rookie error. I've not done one of these in a while. It's fine. It all flowed. We got the answers. Tobias.
Yes.
Tell us about your question.
Yeah.
Apologies for that.
Yeah. I'll gladly do that. Yeah. No, but so as I came into here at another question, I saw this. It was so interesting. This is about a year ago, or a little bit less than so, where we're still quite new at this new company, then Fundler, where we had quite many new people coming in and quite many leaving. It was a very interesting time, but it was great because then we had this super like possibility to kind of start a new way of working and actually become even better in what we were doing. I mean, we're still quite many there, but I think all of us felt like, but this is good. This is like a new start. We can finally do it. And it was so interesting. So we got new colleagues coming in, really, really experienced, great colleagues coming in. But of course, they were new at the job, right? And I had been there for like 6 months. So that means that I had some I mean, the basics I had. I had also been in the financial sector before. Many maybe hadn't really. Many hadn't worked necessarily with savings in that way. I mean, and you don't need to when you're a developer, for example. But after a few months, I started feeling that I started losing a little bit control. I had a very clear way of how I wanted everything to work. I had been a product owner for many years. I had started many new teams and made them like from never working agile and starting to become more agile and so on. And now I felt, oh, I'm starting to lose control and something is really, really starting to happen and what's happening. And this is like, I was so lucky because I had a mentor during this time and we talked a lot about it. And she introduced me to something called this forming, storming, norming and performing kind of thing, right? So I started really thinking more and more about this. And this is maybe where it comes in then, like, how do you effectively handle these group changes? And I'm so eager to hear your views on it, if you ever thought about it, because again, like just a few months ago, this was very new to me, and now I can't stop thinking about it, and I try to think about it in every aspect, like it almost works in your private life as well, I could say. Yeah, so I'm happy to hear.
I'm really intrigued by your experience on the flip side of this, Anna, because you're quite often as a freelancer the change that comes in, rather than like sort of fitting into new cultures and getting to grips with new dynamics with each new project that you undertake. So what's your experience, and how do you sort of seamlessly try to join a business and their culture and their dynamic?
I love this question. Like this, I could talk about this for hours. But it depends on how stable the team is when people rotate out, right? To what you said, Tobias, that like if there's a lot of people at once that shifts, then you sort of need to reboot from the start and spend a lot of time on forming that team and who do we want to be and what's important to us. And I think I've shifted over the years. If I'm like the leader in a team or the coach of a team, I think I have shifted a lot from, getting people the practical details, like, oh, hey, you're new, this team does this, here are the goals, here are the, I wanted to spam them with information. Whereas I think I've shifted more now towards, here's what we value here. Here's what we care about, like if you don't have questions, don't fake it, like ask them, and to constantly be the mirror of the team, like something weird is going on here, what's going on? Or I feel like we are losing speed or that people are confused. Do you feel it too? To constantly just be the container for them to find that dynamic and quicker get to a place of performance or healthy, depending on if it's dysfunctional. But yeah, that's my take.
Thanks, Anna. Silvia, what's your take?
I think it's a really good question, and I have a slightly controversial opinion on this, or at least I know that there is a lot of people who don't necessarily agree with me. But the thing is that there are a lot of frameworks that you can do to work with team dynamics, right? Like a lot of them like come from personality tests. A few examples are like Myers and Briggs, or there's a DISC framework or a strengths and weaknesses framework. And these are often criticized, right? Because they basically all put people like in a category or a label, and then you initiate a discussion. But my opinion is that they are all great because they trigger the discussion. So what I would say, like, it doesn't really matter which framework you use, like they all have their, benefits and sort of their weaknesses, but it's so important to have something to create that space for the discussion. Because no matter, what kind of like personality or label you have, you start to discuss like, okay, so what is the composition of people we have in the team? Is there something that we would like to see more at? Because we may feel that we are missing this particular skill set or energy in the team. Is there something that we have more at? And then the more you sort of practice that, the more also you normalize these kind of discussions, because it's not super easy to have a completely honest, real discussion about team dynamics if it's a dedicated meeting to talk about it. So that's the thing that I found during my career that works best. Just pick whatever framework you find interesting and make sure to find the time and space to have a discussion on that. And then the more cultural aspect is, that's a little bit harder to achieve, right, is to make sure that it's a safe environment to talk about, that there is honesty, that there is trust, there's psychological safety, that people really feel that they can share their honest opinion on the topic.
Love that. It's a fantastic answer. Ehtisham, finally, what are your thoughts on your not question that I asked you? What do you think?
I think I'll just try to put it in a way that there's one thing that is team building, and then there's another thing where you have to maintain the decorum and you have to entertain these dynamic changes that are happening over the period of time. I think Anna already mentioned about something when there are different scenarios where one can be that all of the guys are just resigning off and you have to bring on board a new set of players or the team members to engage in the process and keep them aligned and motivated alongside the business goals and a lot. I think I can speak with some of the experience that I've had in a bit of similar situation, where when I joined that organization and on that certain product, what happened was the team of 5 people that were working basically were laid off, or basically they resigned or laid off, whatever, but they went off in that product altogether. And I was the first one after they were laid off to get on board with the product. And the challenges that I would like to talk about in regards to that is like, usually I think the onboarding process is something, I know there's no silver bullet for this, or there's no right hand thumb rule for this to have a very good onboarding process. I think it differs from product to product, from organization to organization. But I think there should be some comprehensive onboarding program which should be part of these when these dynamic changes are in place, so that you as an organization or as a team can entertain new people in a better way, to communicate them and align them with what you guys have already been doing and what is being expected from you. And continuing this with this, I think the next thing is like defining the clear roles and expectations. What's lacking, or what has been lacking for some time in mostly in the startups and those organizations, is that you don't have those clear directions. You don't have those clear roles and expectations from you. When I was onboarded on that project, I was thrown. It felt like I was thrown to the wolves. Just go and fetch what's been happening in the product and try to enjoy it. I mean, this is one way to make you learn about things, but there should be a process around it, you know. So I think these two things should be really looked up to. And I think the third one, which is, I think most of the guys have already talked about it, is to have this open communication. When somebody you're onboarding, you have to encourage them to have open dialogues, to address the concerns and maintain this kind of environment throughout when you're having these kind of changes. I think this is one of the core things that should be happening in there, this open dialogue and open communication thing. Because when you're making these kind of changes and you're expecting that things can go south at any given point, I think the best way to entertain or tackle this could be to have this open dialogue, which most of the times I think we have seen in our fraternity that we can resolve most of these disputes and issues by just having a conversation with each other. So I think this is very important when we are trying to align and entertain these dynamic changes.
The onboarding piece is so important. I mean, speaking from my experience in my role in placing freelancers across the Nordics, those that fit in quickest and get off to the best starts have a clear and outlined onboarding process that outlines expectations of that person and gives them expectations of the people around them and the business at a whole and of their manager. I think you can start 1-0 down if you don't have that set out in place, and you can sort of really get into a bit of a rut and start to think, have I made the right decision in coming here? And your manager can conversely think, have we made the right decision in taking this person on? So the onboarding piece for me is hugely important, but we'll throw it back to Tobias for the final word.
Great insights. Thank you so much. Really interesting to hear, and it's very interesting also because what you're saying, it's kind of what I started finding out, you know, when I became more and more aware of it. I feel that communicating about it, like awareness that this is actually something that's going on. We are right now in this storming phase. When we could kind of realize this all together, we could start talking about it. And when you start talking about it, then you start forming like common goals. And that was like the next step for us to come out from the storming phase. We shared values. We started trusting each other because we were new to each other. So this led quite fast after realizing that now we could take us a step further into this more of a like a normalizing zone, right, or phase, to become sooner into this performing phase where it was just so extremely fun. We had gone through this hard time together, and now we felt, wow, we are performing every sprint, great stuff is coming out, and it was just so happy to so fun to work with each other. And I think it was interesting though, because I mean, I feel that the onboarding phase was actually quite the easier part here. I mean, I agree with you. Onboarding is super important to make also new colleagues feel that they're welcome. They don't sit and roll their thumbs, because nobody likes that. Everybody wants to come up and really contribute. But it was, I think, so experienced and good people that came, and they had so much experience to and wanted so much to also contribute, right? So it was rather like all their things that they had brought with them throughout their career that rather made us kind of collide, but it was so necessary to form the group we are today. So that I think was one of the greater insights from me in this situation.
Fantastic final words. This has been the Live Series podcast. I want to take this opportunity to thank today's panel for their incredible insights. If you're listening to this with challenges on your mind that you'd like to share with industry leaders, don't hesitate to reach out to me on LinkedIn or via email at shaun.hughes@amicusjobs.com to get involved in upcoming episodes. You can also check out our show reel of content and some exciting opportunities on our website at amicusjobs.com. We'll see you next time.